Welcome to episode 6 of Manuscripting Pod, a show where I talk about writing, explore procrastination, and attempt to keep my inner critic hog-tied and in the corner. In this episode, I'm talking about structure and how I found it over the years. So, in terms of what's exciting, Cara Malone has been working on a series of fairy tale reworkings or twists or turns, whatever you want to call it, with a romance arc, and Cinders is absolutely fabulous. So that's what I'm reading for relaxation and enjoyment. For work, I've been reading a whole lot, I don't know, what do you want to call it, a smorgasbord of books on habit. They're really useful for my day job, so I like to have a whole library of different books that I can suggest to clients for a variety of things. And habit seems to be one that a lot of clients ask. They always ask, how can I get, I have this bad habit. How do I stop it? I keep doing this thing. How do I stop it? I went to my library's ebook platform and downloaded almost everything they had on habit, and oh man, is there a lot of trash fire in the habit book genre, if you will, or subgenre. Trope? Is it a trope? I don't know. It's a lot of people just kind of make stuff up about habits. I mean, some of it is based off of some of the research that's out there. So one book, I'll just use it as an example. I don't want anyone to go, I'm not even going to link to this because it's garbage. The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg? I don't know what his last name is. It's trash. He supports some of his argument with faulty or invalid research, which just goes to show he chose to not look at it or not look closely at the research. Or he just didn't look at any of the research that said he was wrong. He just cherry picked the good stuff. So I can't with this book. It's so bad. I couldn't finish it. Usually, if there's like a religious overtone or something, I will push through it and read it because a lot of my clients use faith-based services. So I couldn't with this book because it was so bad. So a quick update, and I'm kind of excited about it for the podcast. I'm starting to load the shows onto YouTube, so it gives people a variety of different ways to subscribe. So it'll be up there with a static image. I'm not using the show images because I haven't asked the folks who let me use their images for the show for permission to use them on YouTube, and to do that I need to. So I'm just using my own images on YouTube. So if you sub to my YouTube channel, which is hilariously Comfortable Shoes Stud, it'll sub you to also all of my other stuff. Lots of painting, coffee roasting, art, journaling technique, and stuff like that. I want to talk about daily structure, what the daily structure looks like for me. I need structure in my day, and I think I've talked about that in previous episodes, but this became very apparent to me when I was out of work. Right after I graduated from my graduate program, I was hired. I had a job by the place where I had last interned. They hired immediately to work there, and then HR couldn't get off their hands to actually get me started. There were snafus with my paperwork that someone in HR quit. The person I had been working with and emailing back and forth quit, and I was not notified, so I kept sending this person emails, and then it bounced back to me. They had just deleted her email, and then, I called someone that I knew at the company, and I was like, hey, what's going on? And they were like, oh, you need to contact this person. I contacted that person, said, here's my paperwork. Then they wanted to do another query, but I already had one done within the year for them, by them, so they didn't actually need to do it. They wanted me to do another drug test, which I was happy to do, but I didn't actually have to have another urine screen done. But there was all of this stuff where HR just couldn't get it together to get me started. So I was out of work for 2 months. And I have always been the person that says, if I have time off, if I ever get laid off, I will find something to do. I have hobbies. I have interests. I will be the person that is always busy. Except for in those 2 months right after graduation. I did nothing. I binge watched TV. I think I binge watched Buffy for the 11th time. I binge watched Deep Space Nine? Stargate Atlantis and the other Stargate series. I watched all of the TV and then some while I was in those 2 months when I could have been, in 2 months, realistically, I could have finished a novel if I had sat down, got my butt in the chair, put my fingers on the keyboard. I could have finished a novel in those 2 months. And this is where it gets complicated, I think. I had just graduated, and I went through this when I graduated from my undergrad. I was all of a sudden I had no identity as a student. I am always someone who, when I have been a student, I have always very identified with being a student. And I have changed my perspective on that idea of being a student lately. And this is something that in the late 90s we talked a lot about in education, because for those of you who don't know, I was a teacher in the late 90s and early 2000s. And we always talked about lifelong learning. I am a lifelong learner. I love learning. I like reading about things. I like absorbing information. If I have an interest, I will dive deep into that interest and I will learn everything about it that I possibly can, and then some. I'll burn it out until I'm no longer interested in it. But because of that interest, I really identify as being a student. And then, when I was in grad school, I was very interested in the things that I was learning about. I was one of the first times that I had done a thesis. I had done some pretty extensive papers in my undergrad degree, but not a thesis. It was intense. It was a really intense process. Very worthwhile. I don't know that I would want to do it again. I had this structure to my day as a student where I had school on certain days of the week, but also I had internship on other days of the week. And then when I wasn't there, I had very specific time frames as to when I had this paper due, and then I had this paper due, and I had this paper due. I had this part of my thesis due, and then this part of the thesis due. And things were very structured for me by being a student and being in school. And all of a sudden, that was over. And I wasn't a student anymore. And I had this major chunk of my identity taken away. And like I said, I went through this with my undergrad as well. For those 2 months, as I was waiting in both situations, I was waiting to start a job. It was really hard to not be a student and wait to start the job. I think I would have been in better space with both of them if I could have started the job immediately after graduating, but that's just wasn't the reality of either job. And I told myself, well, I deserve this time to relax. I deserve this time to rest. And both times I vegetated. I did nothing. Like I said, I watched a lot of TV, binge watched TV, wasted time. Could have written a novel in that time, which is what brings me to another thing. I don't want to go too in depth with it, but there are the mental health complications as well. I struggle with minor depression and some pretty severe anxiety issues. When I graduated from my undergrad, that was completely undiagnosed and I didn't have the tools to deal with it. And now that I'm older, I do have the tools to deal with it, and I am diagnosed, so it changed. I wasn't as depressed this time, and I had these tools to deal with it. I was able to say, I think I'm a little bit depressed right now. I think I'm a little anxious. And so because I was able to identify those things, I didn't get as sad or hopeless as I did when I graduated from my undergrad, but it was definitely a shift in perspective. But that brings me to thinking about, for me, having the daily structure of a day job is absolutely necessary, not just for my mental health, but also for my ability to create. I need to have a place to go every day where I have an identity. I am a therapist. I work at a partial hospitalization program in this city, here in this state, in the United States, and that is a big part of my identity. And I think that's a very Northeast United States type thing. I know, if you meet someone in the Boston area or in Massachusetts or anywhere in this region, their second question out of their mouth is like, hey, I'm so-and-so, and what do you do for work? That is a Northeast thing. So I have to have that identity as a person who goes to this day job. And I'm very aware that I am just a cog in the wheel of the machine of my day job. But being a cog in the wheel of the machine of the day job allows me to pay my bills and not rely on my creativity for paying the bills. It gives me daily structure. It gives me a place to go. I know that from 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. I am working at the partial hospital program, and then from 4 until 5 I see my individual client. At 5 until 5:30 I fill out paperwork, and then I drive home I'm home by 6 o'clock most nights. With that time I can journal, I can write, I can do whatever, but also, part of that is that it allows me, because I have a set structure to my time, it allows me to say, well, now that I have this set structure, I can get up a half hour early. I know that I'm going to be leaving for work at 8. I need to get up at 7 o'clock to be ready to leave at 8. So if I get up at 6:30, then that gives me a half hour to work. And by work, I mean that gives me a half hour to work on my creative writing. That gives me a chance to write my fiction. That is a very necessary thing for me. Not everyone needs that daily structure, or they're very good at giving themselves their own daily structure. And I think, like, when I have vacations or I take time off, I'm very good at giving myself a daily structure. If I schedule a day off in advance, I can say, well, you know what? On that Friday, I'm going to write from 9 a.m. until 2 p.m. And then from 2 p.m., I'm going to, do laundry. I'll do this. I'll do that. Like, that's a very different type of thing. But I need structure, is the basis of what I'm saying. And I think that more people out there than they think need some sort of daily structure as well. I see a lot of people posting online about how they're floundering and, they have a hard time with things. And I would suggest taking a look at what your daily structure is. What's the structure of your day? Are you actually planning out and thinking about what you're doing from this time to this time? In the past, like before I set the half hour time slot to write, I was zoning out on Facebook first thing in the morning, checking up on what all my friends were doing. I was checking personal email and checking to see, do I have any Etsy sales? Are there comments on YouTube that I need to respond to? Did anyone say something wrong on Twitter that I need to jump on? That was what I was doing with my time before I said, I'm going to take these 25 minutes and I'm going to dedicate it to something that I give a crap about. I care about this novel. I want this novel to become a real thing. And I'm going to take 25 minutes of my time every day and I'm going to work on it. And making that decision to dedicate my time to something that I care about has been an unbelievably great, relaxing boon to my life. It's fabulous. It's a really good thing. But anyway, I think I've tapped out that. All right, here's the check-in. I've worked all 7 days this week. I'm not subscribing to No 0 Days. I admit that it feels good to write every day. I'm sticking to my goal of 5 out of 7 days because if I don't give myself the ability to have those 2 days off or have 0 days, then I beat myself up. And what I always want to try and avoid is beating myself up for things. So 5 out of 7 days. I've worked 7 days this week. I worked 7 days last week. I have written this week 8,458 words so far. I might write again tonight. 39,741 words into this novel, which I'm very excited about. One of the things that's been really helpful in keeping me writing every day is getting off social media. I love the groups I'm in. I really am enjoying the Manuscripting Pod Facebook group. Instagram is totally my jam, but reducing my Facebook time has really opened up a lot of time in my day to think about the book, work on this podcast. The podcast is becoming very important as part of my process, I think. And so because I'm reducing my Facebook time, I'm still very active in the Facebook, the Manuscripting book, and Manuscripting Pod Facebook group. Let me garble my words, as well as the RSVP page. I'm also on Erasable Daily, but just as an FYI, I've gotten a bunch of Facebook friend requests. I'm not accepting any new friend requests on my personal Facebook account. I'm really keeping that tight to my family and close friends that I know in real life. Don't be insulted if I delete your request. If you want to interact with me on Facebook, I'm in the Manuscripting Pod Facebook group, RSVP, Erasable page daily. If you want to chat, that's the best place to go because I am open in those chats every day, whereas I'm not in my Facebook as much, if that makes sense. So anyway, as the spotlight, I want to highlight a new sort of page called Artsupia. It's an art making and art supply discussion forum connected to the Art Supply Posse podcast. They like to call it a calmer, quieter art place away from social media. It's a forum instead of social media. So less discussion but it's focused on specific things. So that's really cool. I like that. I want to give a huge thanks for this week's pod image, which Marcus of the Art Supply Posse and Artsupia provided. I think it's a nice tongue-in-cheek take on done is better than perfect. So you can laugh at that if you'd like. And certainly go check out Artsupia and the Art Supply Posse podcast. It's been rebooted. It's all new. The old shows are not on there, but it's very cool. So some shout outs. I want to shout out to the folks who've been very supportive of the podcast and of me. Lady True North, thank you for the supportive words via instant messenger on, I think it was Instagram. Gustavo, thank you for the comment on the page. It means a lot. And of course, everyone interacting and giving me feedback via Twitter. I'm really enjoying that. Finally, as a way to wrap this up, if you want to show your support for the show, head on over to your favorite location and leave a review. I don't care where you leave the review, leave a review. If you left a review already, you don't want to engage with Apple, share the show on your favorite social media location. Facebook is a great place to send out a tweet about the podcast. Twitter is really great. Put all those hashtags in there about writing. And if you want to support me, you can head over to my Ko-fi page, and you can usually find me on most social media at Original Elsie Harper on most locations. And you can also find the site over at manuscriptingpod.com. If you're looking for the RSS feed, I do have it posted in several different places on the Manuscripting Pod website. But let me give it to you verbally. Manuscriptingpod.com /feed/podcast will give you all of the podcasts. So thank you for listening, and I hope you give yourself 5 out of 7 days to write, because it feels great to sit down and create a world.